Hi everyone, it's Miss Saunders. Today we're going to go over What About Ceramic slides 1 through 29. You have a fillable Google Doc which you will be filling out as we go through the slides. You will be looking for the underlined words in white. I will be going at a pace that feels comfortable to me, but feel free to pause if needed. So let's get started. Clay terms to know: ceramics, ceramicist, plasticity, stoneware, bisque fire, clay bodies, clay, earthenware, greenware, glazed fire. So what about ceramics? In art, the term ceramics derives from keramos, Greek for potter's clay, refers to items made from clay bodies that are fired in a kiln to obtain the finished form. Ceramic materials are objects formed in clay which go through chemical and molecular changes during firing. Ceramics include pots, sculptures made of fired clay, and many objects made from specialized clays for industrial use. This slide shows various ceramic forms. For example, hairstyling tools are made from a form of ceramic material. Some medical supplies and parts of cars are also made of ceramic material. A ceramicist is a person who works with any form of ceramic materials. It is referring either to studio ceramics, the art and craft of working with clay, either as pottery or sculpture, or industrial, highly refractory ceramic materials. What is clay? Is it simply dirt? Well, yes and no. Dirt covers a lot of ground, so to speak. We can break dirt into several sections: topsoil, clay, inelastic earth, and rock. Topsoil contains a lot of organic material, which makes it good for growing plants. Clays and inelastic earths are the results of decomposing rocks, in which the particle size is extremely small. Rocks include bedrock and boulders, all the way down to fine sand. Clay differs from the inelastic earths and fine sand because of its ability, when wet, with a proper amount of water, to form a cohesive mass and to retain its shape when molded. This quality is known as clay's plasticity. When heated to high temperatures, clay also partially melts, resulting in the tight, hard rock-like substance known as ceramic material. Clay is divided into several classes based on its characteristics and the temperature the clay must be fired to reach its optimum hardness and durability. The three most commonly used clay bodies are low-fire earthenware, mid-fire and high-fire stoneware, and porcelain. Clay body refers to the actual clay mixture that is used in forming objects. It might have one specific type of clay in it, but most likely will be a mixture of different types of clay. Examples: clay bodies come in a wide spectrum of colors, from white to red to black, and many colors in between. Earthenware. It's the oldest type of pottery, dating back to the Stone Age. Earthenware is less strong. It is fired at temperatures between 1000 to 1200 degrees Celsius. This category of earthenware includes all ancient pottery, terracotta objects, 16th century and later Japanese and Chinese pottery, as well as European pottery made up to the 17th century. The greatest examples of fine art earthenware are the series of Chinese clay warriors known as the Terracotta Army. Stoneware. Called stoneware due to its dense stone-like quality after being fired, it is impermeable, waterproof, and opaque, which means you can't see through it and it's not translucent. It is fired at temperatures of between 1100 degrees and 1300 degrees Celsius. These clays are used to manufacture commercial ware, but are also preferred by artists creating fine art pottery. The earliest stoneware was produced during the Shang dynasty in China. It first appeared in Europe in the 15th century and later in the 17th century. English ceramicists began producing a form of stoneware. In the 18th century, Josiah Wedgwood created a black stoneware and white stoneware known as jasperware. Porcelain clay bodies are known for their hardness, their extremely tight density, their whiteness, and their translucence when the pottery walls are thin. Kaolin clays are the foundation of all porcelain clay bodies. Fired at temperatures of 2300 degrees Fahrenheit and over was first achieved by the Chinese. Porcelain from Ming-era China is among the most treasured on Earth. Shrinking from wet to bone dry. All clays shrink. Different clay bodies experience different amounts of shrinkage. It depends upon the clay's particle size and what type of impurities are present in the clay body. When clay is wet and very pliable, it contains a great deal of water. The clay particles ride within the water, which makes the clay plastic or easily workable. As the clay dries, the water evaporates, escaping from those spaces in between particles. The particles move closer together, resulting in the entire pot to shrink. Shrinkage due to drying is generally between 4% and 10%. What are the characteristics of a good hand-building clay body? Three requirements of a good hand-building clay body is strength and plasticity. Because many hand-built forms need a high degree of strength in the greenware stage, hand-building clay bodies often have 20% to 30% grog or other non-filler. Plasticity refers to how flexible a clay is. To find how plastic clay is, make a coil of clay and then wrap it around your finger. A plastic clay will not crack or break. Non-plastic clays will. Examples: small organisms can grow within the clay. These organisms help increase a clay's plasticity. For example, one of those things would be mold. I know it sounds really gross, but the more the clay has mold, the better it actually is. Greenware is the term given to clay objects when they have been shaped but have not yet been bisque fired. Greenware may be in any of the stages of drying: wet, damp, soft leather hard, stiff leather hard, dry, and bone dry. Examples: greenware is very fragile and must be handled very carefully when loaded into the kiln for its first firing. What is firing? Firing clay transforms it from soft beginnings into a new substance, ceramic. Ceramics are tough, strong, and very similar in ways to stone. Pieces of pottery have survived for thousands of years, all due to clay that met fire. Firing is a process of bringing clay and glazes up to a high temperature. The final aim is to heat the object to the point that the clay and glazes have reached their optimal level of melting. Clay objects won't look melted, their melting is on the molecular level. The final aim is done in 2 steps. Bisque firing, the first time the pots go through the high temperature heating. This vitrifies the clay's pots that they won't be harmed when glazes are applied. The bone dry greenware is very fragile and must be loaded into the kiln with a great deal of care. The kiln lid is closed and the heating is slowly begun. A very slow temperature rise is critical during the beginning of the bisque firing. The last of the water is driven out of the clay. If heated too quickly, the water will turn into steam while inside the clay body, causing the clay to burst. Once the desired temperature has been reached, the kiln is turned off. The cooling is also slow to avoid the pots breaking due to stress from the temperature changes. After the kiln is totally cool, it is opened and the newly created bisqueware removed. Clay transformation in the bisque firing. When a kiln reaches about 350 degrees Celsius, the chemically bonded water will begin to be driven off. By the time the clay reaches 500 degrees Celsius, it will have become completely dehydrated. At this point, the clay is changed forever. It is now ceramic. The bisque firing continues until the kiln reaches about 945 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, the pot has centered, making it less fragile while still porous enough to accept the application of glazes. Center. To bring about the agglomeration, so stick togetherness, of certain materials through heating. In ceramics, the clay particles center even before they actually begin to melt into a glassy state, vitrification. The purpose of bisque firing is to reach the clay's centering temperature without heating it to the point of vitrification. The pots center in the kiln beginning at about 900 degrees Celsius. The kiln's firing was interrupted and the pots are not centered, so they cannot be glazed. Glaze firing. Once glazes have been applied to the bisqueware and have had a chance to dry, the ware is carefully loaded into the kiln for the glaze firing. Pots cannot be allowed to touch at all, or the glazes will melt together, welding the pots together. The kiln is slowly heated to the proper temperature to bring the clay and glazes to maturity, and then slowly cooled again. Only after the kiln has been cooled will it be opened and unloaded. So these questions you'll be answering using complete sentences. Number 1, define ceramics. 2, how are ceramic materials formed? 3, define ceramicist. 4, what are clays the result of? 5, what is the difference between clay, inelastic earths, and fine sand? 6, at what temperature is earthenware fired? 7, what are the three qualities of stoneware? What happens when clay dries? Is number 8. Number 9, what are the characteristics of a good hand building clay body? Number 10, explain how to find out how plastic clay is. Number 11, define greenware. Number 12, why must greenware be handled very carefully when loaded into the kiln? Number 13, explain the clay transformation in the bisque firing. Number 14, what is glaze firing?